Hello, long time no talk. Okay, I haven't really been inspired, I should say, to deliver any sort of message or thoughts. I think I've been going through a period of contemplation and learning, I think. But a sentence kept popping up in my mind the other day, and I just kept milling around over it, and I think we're down to it. So let's get into it. Okay, you ready? So, like, if any of y'all have ever played any sports ever, you've heard the saying, "Don't take your eye off the ball." It applies to every sport, even gymnastics. You know, when you're doing a flip, you're always eyeing the floor before your eyes are following your hands, not your feet. You're eyeing the floor before you even see your feet. So don't take your eye off the ball. What happens when you take your eye off the ball? You swing and miss, right? You throw an interception. You miss a 3-point shot. You miss that assist to put the ball in. You kick a bad field goal. All sorts of things. If we're using sports metaphors. So my thing is, that very directly, I think, correlates to what I think God tries to tell us sometimes, so simply. How many times have we taken our eye off the ball, right? Sometimes it could be, for a long time, like you fell into habitual sin. That can cause you could lose a whole season because of that. You know what I mean? If we're using sports metaphors. Sometimes you can take your eye off the ball and get focused on things that you shouldn't be worried about. And at first it seems distracting, but then it turns on you. And you forgot what your mission was, and you took your eye off the ball. And then you remembered, oh crap, I'm in the middle of the game. It's time for me to bat. I better get it back together, right? Because it's my time. My time's up right now. So let's start from the very beginning, okay? In Genesis, chapter 2, after he had made Adam and Eve, he told them, everything in this earth is for you. You have dominion over the sea, the ground, the animals, everything. But he did say there was one thing that they could not have anything to do with. He states in verse 16 to 16, and the Lord commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest eat freely. Have whatever you want. Except 17. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it. For in that day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Okay, let's cease there and stop for a minute and rewind back to chapter 1. All right, I find it interesting that I did not know this until recently. He created all of the grass, I never thought about it this way. All of the animals, all of the grass, told them to be fruitful and multiply between days 1 and 5. Now, we don't know if those were 24-hour calendar days or if they were a month, a week. We don't know. Some people are literalists, some people are figuralists. So we just don't know. I'm of the, it was 7 days, but it could have been 7 years. We don't know. But he did tell even the animals, be fruitful and multiply. And then after that, he created man. So he already had everything that man would need in place when they got here. They were set. He had it prepared for them. So they were not going to go without. Now, this is important to remember. Now, so they go and they eat. Second point that I think is important to notice is, let's talk about that. They're not going to go without. Why do we take our eye off the ball sometimes? Sometimes we take the ball into our own hands. We don't follow the coach's rules or the game plan because we think we know better. We get out there on the field and we're like, he's not seeing what I'm seeing up there. He's up in the box and I'm on the field and I'm seeing this. But what we don't know is They're in the box and they're seeing everything. All we can see is right in front of us. So we change the game plan, right? Not knowing that if we would just follow the plan, everything would be there for us. And then we end up throwing an interception, and then the team comes back and they score on us, right? We took our eye off the ball, aka what he told us to do. Okay, second, what is interesting about that second verse that I think is very important to think about when we're talking about taking our eye off the ball is he tells them, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest, thou shalt surely die. Now, did they die physically? No, but they died as in their perfect communication in their now need for their righteousness was gone because they knew no sin, right? What is interesting is it was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What happens when you take your eye off the ball in life and you do something that is out of the will of God, but you're like, I'm just going to make it happen? You sometimes run into evil that you were never intended to run into. And what does it do? It kills your spirit. Kills your spirit. It could kill your finances. It could ruin your marriage. It could ruin your health. It could do a lot of things. They were not supposed to, he never intended them for them to know evil. You know, sometimes bad things happen and there's evil people out there. And I wrestled with this for like a year. And I'm like, I just can't understand it. I don't understand how anyone could be like this. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, because, you know, most normal people don't have the capability of being that unempathetic. You know, when you hear about people that do awful things. And I'm not just using myself as an example, like everybody. And then I finally, you know, I never could wrap my head around it. Finally came to the conclusion that you're not supposed to understand it. You know why? You were never meant to understand it. If you had never taken your eye off the ball and done what he told you not to do, you never would have had to experience that. But you're never going to understand it because you don't have the capacity to be evil. You're going to experience it, but because of his righteousness and his salvation, that's not inside of me, right? And if we could understand evil, we could really grasp it. Some people say they can't. I don't think you really can. Not when it's done to you personally, you know. If you could really grasp it, that means that you could relate. That means that you were then also capable of doing such evil yourself, right? So I came to the conclusion, I'll never understand it. And I don't want to, because then that would make me like you know, and then I would have that ability. And I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to cause somebody undue harm because I've taken my eye off the ball and died on the inside. And now, you know, hurt people. So there's many examples of people in the Bible taking their eye off the ball and then suffering the repercussions of evil. Adam and Eve's one. They were cast out of the garden and they lost fellowship with God. And now they were, you know, they had to clothe themselves. They were sinners now. Their son killed their other son. And then he was marked. He was a man that was without a home his whole life. He was a wanderer. You know, he was always like a nomad. He could never go back home. There's one example.